The first thing he noticed was the way she stood at the edge of the yard, not stepping forward, not stepping back, like the ground itself had asked her to pause. Dust clung to her shoes, and her coat hung loose on her shoulders as if it belonged to someone else. She looked at the ranch house the way a person looks at a closed door when they are not sure they are welcome on the other side. The wind moved through the fields behind her, bending the tall grass, but she did not turn to see it. She kept her eyes on the porch, waiting for something she could not name. This ranch had seen its share of drifters passing through, workers looking for a place to stay, people carrying more stories than luggage. Still, there was something about her that made the air feel different. She was not loud or desperate. She was quiet in a way that suggested she had learned how to survive by not asking for much. Her hands were tucked into her sleeves, fingers curled as if holding on to the last pieces of warmth she had left. He watched from the doorway, one boot on the step, the other still inside. He had not planned to open the door that morning. The day was meant for mending fences and checking the far pasture, yet there he was, drawn by the sound of hesitant footsteps and the feeling that the past had found a way to knock again. The ranch had been his refuge for years, a place where the land asked honest questions and gave honest answers. It did not pry, it did not judge, it only demanded work and respect. When their eyes met, she flinched just slightly, as if expecting him to turn away. He did not. He had seen that look before, in mirrors and in memories he tried not to visit. It was the look of someone who had been worn down by life, not by one single blow, but by many small ones that never quite healed. Whatever had brought her here had taken something from her, something important, and she was not sure it would ever be returned. She told him she was looking for work. Her voice was steady, but it carried a weight that did not match the simple words. She did not explain where she came from, or why she had chosen this ranch instead of any other. She did not need to. The ranch stood far from town, far from easy roads, and people did not end up here by accident. It came because they were running from something, or because they had nowhere else to go. He asked a few questions, the kind he asked anyone who showed up unannounced. Could she work long hours? Could she handle the quiet? Could she follow rules that were not written down but mattered all the same? She answered without hesitation, as if she had already prepared herself for doubt. She said yes to everything, even to things he had not yet asked. He should have sent her away. He told himself that more than once. The ranch was not a place to mend broken hearts, and he had learned the hard way that taking on other people's pain could reopen wounds he had spent years trying to close. Yet when he looked at her, standing there with her shoulders drawn in, he felt the old pull of responsibility and something else he did not want to name. He saw a person who needed time, space, and the kind of silence that lets thoughts settle instead of scream. The agreement was simple: a place to stay, meals at the table, work that started before sunrise and ended when the light was gone. No questions unless she chose to answer them. She nodded, relief flashing across her face before she could hide it. It was not gratitude she showed, but something closer to hope, thin and fragile, like glass held up to the light. Life on the ranch did not bend to emotions. Days moved forward whether hearts were heavy or light. She learned quickly, keeping her head down, listening more than she spoke. She cleaned, cooked, and worked the fields with a determination that bordered on stubbornness. She did not complain, even when her hands blistered or her back ached. At night, she sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the small window, as if waiting for the dark to say something to her. He noticed the little things. The way she paused before entering a room, as if bracing herself. The way loud noises made her tense. The way she avoided mirrors and turned her face away when laughter broke out around the table. She carried her past with her like a shadow, always present, always just out of reach. The ranch, in its own quiet way, began to work on her. The steady rhythm of chores, the honesty of the land, the simple fact that every day required effort and offered reward. She started to breathe easier. Her shoulders relaxed. She spoke a little more, though she still guarded her words carefully. Sometimes when she thought no one was watching, she smiled at the horses or hummed softly while sweeping the porch. He found himself listening for that sound, though he would not admit it. He told himself he was only making sure the work was done, that he was only being fair. But the truth settled in slowly, like dusk over the fields. Her presence had changed the ranch, felt less empty, less like a place built to keep memories out. She filled the spaces he had learned to avoid. Still, there were walls between them. He did not ask about her scars, the ones he glimpsed when her sleeves slipped back. She did not ask about the quiet sadness that followed him like a second shadow. They moved around each other carefully, two people afraid that one wrong step could bring everything crashing down. Some nights, he sat on the porch long after the work was done, watching the stars rise over the land. He thought about the life he had chosen, the solitude he had claimed as safety. He wondered what it meant that someone else now shared that space. He wondered how long peace could last before the past demanded payment. She stood at her window those same nights, listening to the sounds of the ranch settling into sleep. She told herself this place was temporary, that she would leave once she was strong enough. Yet each morning when she stepped outside and felt the earth under her feet, the idea of leaving felt heavier. Neither of them spoke about what was growing in the quiet between them. It was unspoken but real, a fragile connection built on shared silence and unasked questions. Trust came slowly, like water seeping into dry ground. Love, if that was what it was, remained a word neither dared to use. Then one evening, as the sun sank low and painted the sky in deep colors, something changed. A sound from the road broke the calm, unfamiliar and sharp. She froze mid-step, her face draining of color. Whatever had found its way to the ranch had followed her for a reason. He saw it in her eyes, the fear she could no longer hide, and knew that the quiet they had built together was about to be tested. The past had not forgotten her, and it had finally come looking. The sound from the road faded as quickly as it had come, but the feeling it left behind stayed. The air felt tight, like the land itself was holding its breath. She did not move for a long moment, her eyes fixed on the space beyond the gate. Her hands trembled before she tucked them into her sleeves again, trying to hide the fear that had risen to the surface. He stepped closer, slow and careful, not wanting to startle her. She said it was nothing. The words came out too fast, too practiced. He knew better than to push, yet the way her shoulders stayed stiff told him the truth lived somewhere deeper. Whatever she had run from had found a trail, and the ranch no longer felt as far from the world as it once had. The quiet that usually wrapped around the place now felt thin, easily torn. That night, neither of them slept well. The ranch creaked and settled as it always did, but every sound seemed louder, sharper. She lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying old memories she had sworn she would leave behind. The smell of dust and wood brought comfort, but it also stirred echoes of other places. Other nights when safety had been promised and then taken away, she told herself this ranch was different, that the man who owned it asked nothing from her but honesty in her work. Still, fear has a way of ignoring reason. He sat at the kitchen table long after the lamp should have been turned off. His hands rested around a cold cup of coffee as he listened to the wind outside, thought about the look on her face when the sound came from the road. It was not the look of a person surprised. It was the look of someone who recognized danger before it showed itself fully. He had seen that look once before, years ago, when he had learned that some losses never stop hurting. The next days passed with a strange tension beneath the surface. Life on the ranch continued, as it always did, but small changes crept in. He checked the gate more often. She stayed closer to the house when the sun dipped low. They spoke less, not out of anger, but out of caution, as if words themselves might invite trouble. The land remained steady, offering no answers, only the same endless work that demanded focus and strength. Slowly, pieces of her past began to slip through, not as stories, but as fragments. A scar she covered quickly when she realized it was visible, a flinch when a voice grew too loud. It's a habit of keeping her back to the wall whenever possible. He noticed these things and carried them quietly, adding them to the growing list of questions he did not yet ask. She had not always been this guarded. There had been a time when she believed in promises and warm words. She had trusted someone who spoke of protection and belonging, someone who said they would build a life together. Instead, she learned how easily trust could be twisted into control, how love could become something that bruised instead of healed. Leaving had taken more courage than staying ever did, and the road had taught her how to survive with very little. The ranch had been a last choice, not a hopeful one. She had followed a rumor of work and fair treatment, expecting nothing more than shelter. What she found unsettled her more than she liked to admit. The steady kindness. The way he never raised his voice, the way he treated the land with respect, as if it were a living thing. These things made her feel safe, and safety was dangerous because it made her want to believe again. He, too, carried his awareness of loss. The ranch had not always been quiet. Once, laughter had filled the rooms, and shared dreams had lived in every corner. Then life had taken a sharp turn, leaving him alone with memories he could not escape but rarely spoke of. The land became his companion, his anchor. It asked for effort and gave him peace in return. He told himself that was enough. Her arrival stirred feelings he thought he had buried. Watching her work, seeing the care she put into even the smallest task, reminded him of a time when the future felt open. He fought against the pull, reminding himself that some hearts arrive broken and leave scars behind if held too tightly. Still, when he saw fear cloud her eyes, his instinct was to protect, even if he did not know from what. One afternoon, while repairing a fence near the edge of the property, she finally spoke. Not about the sound from the road, not about her past, but about the land. She asked how long he had owned it, how he learned its moods. The question surprised him, and he answered honestly. He spoke of storms that changed the soil, of seasons that tested patience. As he talked, he realized he was sharing more than facts. He was sharing pieces of himself. She listened closely, absorbing every word. For a brief moment, the weight on her chest eased. Talking about the land felt safe. It did not ask her to explain herself. It did not judge. When their hands brushed while lifting a fence post, she pulled back quickly, fear flashing across her face. He pretended not to notice, but the moment stayed with him. As days turned into weeks, the mystery around her deepened. Sometimes she would disappear into the fields alone, standing still, as if listening for something far away. Other times she would wake before dawn, pacing the yard until the light appeared. The ranch dogs followed her everywhere, drawn to her quiet presence. Animals often sensed things people tried to hide. The road beyond the gate remained silent, yet the tension did not fade. It lingered like a storm that refused to break. He found himself wondering who might come looking and what they would want if they did. The ranch had always been a place apart from the world, but now it felt exposed. He considered asking her to leave for her own safety, but the thought tightened his chest. Sending her away would not erase the danger. It would only move it elsewhere. She sensed the shift in him as well. She knew he was watching more closely, guarding something he had not claimed aloud. Guilt pressed on her. She had not meant to bring trouble to his door. More than once, she packed her few belongings, ready to leave before dawn. Each time, she stopped, unable to take the final step. The ranch had become more than shelter. It had become a place where her heart felt lighter, even as fear lingered. One evening, as the sky darkened and the fields fell quiet, she stood by the gate again. This time, she did not freeze. She took a slow breath, steadying herself. He joined her without speaking, his presence solid and calm. Together, they watched the empty road stretch into the distance. Neither knew what would come next, only that the peace they shared was fragile. Unspoken truths hung between them. Her past waited in the shadows, patient and persistent. His heart stood at a crossroads, torn between protecting his solitude and risking it for someone who had already changed the ranch simply by arriving. The land remained silent, holding its secrets, as if waiting to see whether love could survive the weight of what was coming. The tension did not announce itself loudly. It settled into the ranch like an unwanted guest, quiet but impossible to ignore. Every morning the land looked the same, stretched wide and honest under the sky. Yet something felt off. He woke earlier than usual, listening before his feet touched the floor. She did the same in her small room, holding still until she convinced herself the sounds were normal. They shared this silent habit without ever speaking about it. Work became both refuge and burden. The tasks gave their hands something to do, their minds something to focus on. But they also pulled them apart. He spent longer hours riding the outer edges of the property, checking fences that had not needed checking in years. She stayed closer to the house, tending to chores that kept her within sight of the porch. Neither said why, but both understood the reason. The road remained empty, which somehow made everything worse. It was easier to face a clear threat than to live with the idea of one. She replayed memories she wished would stay buried. The sound of wheels on dirt, a voice calling her name in a tone that pretended to care. She had learned how to read danger before it arrived, and her body remembered even when her mind tried to forget. At times, she caught herself watching him when he thought she was focused on her work. The way he carried himself had changed. His shoulders stayed tense, his eyes scanning the horizon more often. It stirred a mix of comfort and guilt inside her. She did not want to be the reason his quiet life cracked open. Yet the thought of leaving made her chest tighten in a way she could not ignore. He noticed her watching and pretended not to. He told himself he was only being careful, that anyone would be on edge after seeing fear flash so clearly on another person's face. Still, he felt the pull growing stronger. Protecting the land had always been his purpose. Now protecting her seemed tangled up in that duty, whether he wanted it or not. One afternoon, a rider from town appeared at the gate. The visit was harmless, just a delivery and a few words exchanged, but she retreated into the house the moment she saw a stranger. He caught the movement out of the corner of his eye and felt a sharp twist in his chest. When the rider left, he found her in the kitchen, hands shaking as she poured water. She apologized without being asked. She said she was tired, that the heat was getting to her. He nodded and let the lie pass, but the space between them filled with questions. Who was she hiding from? How far would that person go? What would happen if the ranch was no longer enough to keep her safe? That night, the wind rose suddenly, rattling windows and carrying sounds that mimicked footsteps. She sat upright in bed, heart racing, every muscle ready to run. Memories pressed in, uninvited. She had promised herself she would never feel trapped again. The ranch was wide open, yet fear made it feel small. He stepped outside with a lantern, scanning the yard and the road beyond. Nothing moved but shadows. Still, he stayed out longer than necessary, standing guard over a danger he could not see. The thought that someone might take her away from this place, or worse, made his hands curl into fists. Days later, a small discovery deepened the unease. Fresh tracks appeared near the fence line, not from any of the ranch animals. He studied them closely, heart sinking. They could have belonged to anyone passing through, but instinct told him otherwise. He covered the tracks, not wanting to alarm her until he knew more. Silence, once a comfort, now felt like a fragile shield. She sensed the shift immediately. He spoke less at meals, his answers shorter. She wanted to ask what he had seen, what he knew, but fear kept her quiet. Part of her believed that if she did not say it out loud, it might not be real. Another part knew that hiding never stopped the past from catching up. Her dreams grew restless. She woke with tears on her face, images blurring together, old voices mixing with new ones. The ranch tried to heal her, but healing was not a straight path. Some days she felt stronger, more grounded. Other days she felt like the same frightened person she had been when she first arrived, standing at the edge of the yard, unsure if she was welcome. He began to open up in small ways, not about the danger, but about himself. He spoke of why he stayed on the ranch when others left. He talked about loss without giving details about how the land had taught him to endure. She listened, realizing that he too was shaped by things he did not name. Their shared silence took on a new meaning, no longer empty, but heavy with understanding. A subplot of quiet loyalty unfolded around them. The ranch hands noticed the change and adapted without being told. Gates were checked twice. Dogs stayed closer to the house. No one asked questions. In a place built on trust and routine, actions spoke louder than words. She felt both grateful and exposed, knowing others were aware that something was wrong. One evening, she finally broke. Not with a confession, but with a question. She asked him what he would do if someone brought trouble to his land. The question hung between them, simple but loaded. He answered honestly. He said the land was worth defending, but not at the cost of another person's safety. The words were careful, chosen with intent. She nodded, tears threatening to spill. She wanted to tell him everything then. She wanted to explain the fear, the running, the reason she never looked back. But the weight of it pressed her silent. Once spoken, it could not be taken back. And if she told him, he might decide she was too much of a risk to keep. The road tested their patience again not long after. A distant figure appeared one morning, too far to identify. She saw it first, and froze. He followed her gaze. tension flooding his body. The figure did not approach, turning away after a moment, but the damage was done. The past was no longer just a memory. It was near enough to see. That night, neither pretended anymore. He told her the ranch could not hide her forever. She agreed, her voice barely above a whisper. Yet neither spoke of leaving. The bond between them had grown in the space of shared fear and unspoken care. It was not love yet, but it carried the same risk. As darkness settled over the ranch, the unresolved conflict tightened its grip. Her past waited just beyond the fences. His heart stood open in a way it had not been for years. The land, steady and silent, bore witness to it all, knowing that whatever came next would change everything, even if the final outcome remained just out of reach. The days grew heavier, as if the sky itself sensed what was coming. The ranch no longer felt like a hidden place. Every sound carried farther. Every shadow seemed to stretch longer than it should. He moved through his routines with sharp focus, checking locks, counting supplies, watching the road whenever he thought she was not looking. She noticed anyway. She noticed everything now. She tried to stay busy, telling herself that work kept fear from taking over. Still, her thoughts wandered back to the life she had fled. She remembered the moment she realized leaving was her only choice, the promises that turned into demands, the feeling of being watched even when she was alone. She had believed distance would be enough. Standing on the ranch now, she understood how wrong she had been. He sensed her pulling inward again. The openness she had begun to show faded, replaced by careful distance. It worried him more than anger would have. Silence could mean many things, but this kind felt like preparation. He wondered if she was planning to leave in the night, and the thought left a hollow ache in his chest. The land offered no comfort as the weather shifted. Storm clouds gathered in the distance, dark and low. The air smelled like rain mixed with dust, a sign of change that never came gently. Animals grew restless. The dogs paced the yard, ears alert, growls rumbling deep in their chests, at sounds no one else seemed to hear. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, a shape appeared at the far end of the road. This time, it did not turn away. It moved slowly, deliberate, as if testing how much time it had. She saw it from the porch and felt her breath catch. Her body reacted before her mind did, heart racing, muscles tight. The past had finally decided to show its face. He followed her gaze and felt the shift instantly. This was different. The figure came closer, step by step, unhurried. He placed himself slightly in front of her without thinking. The gesture was small, but heavy with meaning. The first time, the danger was not just an idea, it was real and moving, toward them. The figure stopped at the gate, still too far to see clearly. The silence stretched thin. The dogs barked, their warning sharp and unrelenting. She gripped the porch railing, knuckles white. Memories crashed into her all at once, stealing her breath. She had hoped never to stand like this again, waiting for someone who refused to let her go. He did not ask who it was. He did not need to. The tension in her body told him enough. He spoke quietly, asking her to go inside, but she shook her head. Running had shaped her life for too long. Standing still felt terrifying, but it also felt right. The figure lingered, then stepped back, disappearing into the dim light. Relief did not come. Fear only grew stronger. Whatever was happening was not over. It was a warning, a reminder that the past had patience. That night, the storm finally broke. Rain hammered the roof, thunder rolling across the land. She sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug she did not drink from, sat across from her, the space between them filled with everything they had not said. The storm outside mirrored the one inside her. She told him part of the truth then. Not all of it, but enough. She spoke of control and fear of leaving everything behind to save herself. She did not name names or places. He listened without interrupting, his expression steady. Each word tied him closer to her story. He told her she was safe on the ranch, even as he wondered if that promise could be kept. The land had always been his strength, but this threat came from beyond its borders. Protecting her might mean confronting something he had avoided his whole life. The thought scared him more than he wanted to admit. As the storm raged, a new tension surfaced. What they felt for each other could no longer hide behind routine. Fear stripped away excuses. The dim kitchen light, their shared silence turned heavy with emotion. He reached out, stopping just short of touching her hand. The space between their fingers held more meaning than words ever could. She pulled back, not because she did not want the comfort, but because she did. Letting herself feel now could shatter the fragile control she had built. If she broke, she was not sure she could stand again. The following days passed in a blur of preparation. He spoke with the ranch hands, careful and calm, sharing only what was necessary. She watched from a distance, guilt gnawing at her. The ranch had become a place of tension because of her past. She considered leaving again, thinking it might be the only way to keep everyone safe. He sensed her thoughts without her saying a word. One morning, he found her packing. The sight hit him harder than he expected. He asked her to stay, his voice steady but low. He said running would not erase the danger. Facing it together might. She hesitated, torn between fear and trust. No one had ever offered to stand with her before. The choice felt overwhelming. Staying meant risking everything. Leaving meant losing the first place that had felt like home in a long time. Before she could decide, the road delivered another sign. A distant sound, unmistakable now, cut through the quiet. The dogs reacted instantly. He grabbed his jacket, eyes dark with resolve. The past was no longer content to wait at the edge. The tension peaked as the figure returned, closer this time, no longer hiding. The ranch stood still, holding its breath. She felt her heart pounding, her future balanced on the next few moments. He stepped forward, the land at his back, ready to protect what he had grown to care for. The storm clouds gathered again overhead, thick and heavy. Whatever came next would demand courage, honesty, and sacrifice. The ranch, once a place of healing, had become the stage for a confrontation neither of them could avoid. The figure on the road did not rush this time. It moved with intention, each step measured, as if it knew there was nowhere else to go. The ranch seemed to shrink around them, the wide land suddenly feeling too open, too exposed. She stood frozen, every instinct screaming at her to run, yet her feet would not move. The past had found her, and it was done pretending. He stayed beside her, his presence steady even as his thoughts raced. He had faced hard things before, storms that tore through the land, losses that left deep marks. This felt different. This was personal, tangled with someone else's fear and history. He could sense her shaking, though she tried to hide it. The urge to shield her rose strong, almost painful. The dogs barked louder as the figure reached the gate. The sound echoed across the fields, sharp and warning. She swallowed hard, her throat dry. The memories returned in fragments, voices raised, promises twisted into threats, the feeling of being watched even in silence. She had thought distance would bury those moments. Seeing the shape at the gate proved how wrong she had been. He took a step forward, not in anger, but in defense. The ranch stood behind him, every fence post and weathered board carrying years of his life. This place was more than land. It was the only constant he had trusted. Letting someone disturb that peace felt like a challenge he could not ignore. The figure stopped just outside the gate. No words were spoken. The silence pressed in, thick and heavy. She felt her chest tighten, waiting for something to break the stillness. Every second stretched longer than the last. Her mind raced through choices, none of them easy. Stay and face what followed her. Leave and risk losing everything she had begun to rebuild. A breeze swept through the yard, lifting dust from the ground. The figure shifted slightly, then stepped back again, retreating just far enough to remain a threat without crossing the line. The message was clear. This was not over. It was a test of patience and fear. When the road fell quiet again, her knees nearly gave out. He reached for her arm, steadying her. The touch was gentle, grounding. For a moment, she leaned into it before pulling away, emotions swirling too close to the surface. She thanked him in a voice barely above a whisper, then turned toward the house. That night, sleep refused to come. The ranch lights stayed on longer than usual. He walked the perimeter more than once, scanning the darkness, listening for anything out of place. She sat by the window, watching shadows move across the yard, counting breaths to calm her racing heart. Fear brought clarity she could no longer avoid. She realized the ranch was no longer just a hiding place. It was tied to her future now, for better or worse. The man who owned it had become part of her story. whether either of them was ready for that truth. By morning, the tension had not lifted. It settled deeper, like a weight pressing down on every decision. She worked in silence, hands moving on instinct. He noticed her distraction, the way her eyes kept drifting to the road. Neither spoke about the night before, but the unspoken understanding grew heavier. A quiet subplot unfolded around them. The ranch hands sensed the shift and remained close. Meals were eaten faster. Conversations stayed short. The land itself seemed to wait, animals restless, birds scattering at the smallest noise. It felt as though the ranch knew something was coming. She finally told him she might leave. The words came out flat, stripped of emotion. She said she did not want to bring danger to his door, saying it made her chest ache, but it felt honest. He listened, jaw tight, eyes dark with thought. He told her leaving would not guarantee safety. He said the past did not disappear just because someone walked away. His voice was calm, but there was a sharp edge beneath it. He admitted the ranch had already changed because of her. Losing her would leave a mark he could not ignore. Her heart pounded as she listened. No one had ever admitted something like that to her before. She wanted to believe him, wanted to stay, but fear whispered that hope could be dangerous. Trust had cost her before. The road answered their tension again before any decision could be made. A rider appeared in the distance, closer than before, no attempt to hide this time. The dogs erupted into noise, running toward the gate. He moved quickly, placing himself between her and the road. The rider stopped just beyond the fence. Words were exchanged, low and tense, though she could not hear them clearly. She watched from the porch, heart racing, reading the posture more than the sound. The past had found a voice now, and it was speaking directly to the present. He returned with a grim expression, telling her only that the situation was serious. He did not share details, but his eyes said enough. The conflict was no longer something they could wait out. It demanded action, courage, and a choice neither wanted to make. As the sun dipped low, storm clouds gathered again, heavy and dark. The air felt thick, charged. She stood in the doorway, torn between running and standing her ground. He joined her, the space between them tight with everything unsaid. They both knew the next steps would change everything. The ranch, once a place of healing, now stood at the center of a storm built from fear, loyalty, and unspoken love. The road beyond the gate waited, patient and threatening, as the tension climbed toward a breaking point neither of them could escape.